Hey guys, tonight we dive into one of history's most colossal projects, the Great Wall of China. Imagine standing under a relentless sun, dust swirling in your eyes, as this gargantuan wall stretches farther than your imagination can stretch, over 13,000 miles. Like a giant stone serpent winding across the rugged Chinese landscape. You're not just a tourist here. You're drafted into the army of labourers. Your hands raw, your spirit tested. You probably won't survive this day building the Great Wall. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you all are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand in the dusty air of ancient China around 221 BCE under the newly crowned Qin dynasty. The first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, has just unified warring states and now dreams of something monumental, a wall. Not just a fence, but a massive barrier stretching across the northern frontier to keep out the nomadic Xiongnu tribes, those horse-riding raiders who have long terrorized Chinese settlements. This isn't a casual backyard project, it's a colossal fortress of rammed earth, stone, and brick meant to secure an empire's borders. It's the kind of building project that makes the pyramids look like kids' Lego sets. You're not some privileged architect or high-ranking official. No, you're a commoner swept up by imperial decree. The call to labour is deafening. You hear the whistle, the crack of whips, the clang of metal tools on stone. The scale of this endeavour is mind-boggling. The wall will stretch from deserts so dry your throat cracks to jagged mountains where the air chills your bones. It's a military boundary, a symbol of power, and a wall so vast that historians still debate how much of it was actually built by a single dynasty and how much added later. But one thing's certain, whatever the truth. You're about to become a part of this ancient engineering wonder. The vision behind this wall is clear: protect, control, and unify. Qin Shi Huang wants to show the world and his people that China is strong and unyielding. The wall will be a line of defense, but also a psychological barrier. For you, standing here at the beginning, it feels more like a sentence. This is no simple stone wall, but a sprawling project that will change the lives of thousands, if not millions. Already, you can smell the dust, hear the clatter of tools, and feel the rise in tension of forced labour. Your body will soon ache in ways it never has before. Even the terrain conspires against you. The northern steppes are harsh, dry winds carry grit, and barren hills offer no shade. Your boots sink into cracked earth, the sun bakes your skin red, and the wall's outline blurs into the horizon, an endless growing scar on the land. You wonder, as the sweat drips down your back, if this fortress will ever end, or if you're just a grain of sand trapped in its shadow. The sheer scale, the imperial will behind it, is almost overwhelming. The Great Wall's origin story also carries a quirky side. Some versions suggest the wall was linked with mythic tales, like dragons resting beneath its foundations or spirits guarding its stones. While these stories might sound fanciful, they echo the deep cultural weight the wall held even back then. And historians still argue about the exact construction methods and the true purpose of different sections, since what you're about to help build isn't just one wall, but a network of fortifications, watchtowers, and beacon posts stretching over 1,000 miles. So here you are, Standing at the threshold of history, about to join a massive wave of workers bound by imperial command, the sun beats down mercilessly. Your tools feel flimsy, and your future seems chained to this giant project. But before you can even lift a single stone, you have to understand this is not just a wall, it's a symbol of an empire's will, a physical and psychological barrier that will shape China's destiny for centuries to come. You didn't exactly volunteer for this gig. One morning, the imperial summons slams down like a hammer. You're drafted. No fanfare, no opt-out clause. The conscription is real, and it's brutal. As a commoner, your life flips overnight. Gone are the days of tending your small plot or trading at the market. Now, you're a cog in the Empire's grand machine, thrust into the relentless rhythm of labour that will shape the Great Wall. The word forced doesn't even begin to cover it. You're essentially pressed into service, swept up in a tide of thousands bound by the Emperor's command. Imagine the moment you hear the order. Maybe you're eating breakfast, or mending a worn-out sandal, when the local official storms into your village, a list in hand and an impatient glare. Names are called. Families hold their breath. You're on it. There's no negotiation. You gather what little you can carry, say goodbye perhaps forever to your home, and march off toward the construction zones. The roads ahead are uncertain, but the consequences of refusal are worse harsh punishments, public shaming, or even death. Historians still argue about the extent of the cruelty, but accounts describe brutal conscription methods designed to fill the ranks of the workforce fast. On the way, you trudge alongside hundreds of others, the air thick with dust and exhaustion. You pass abandoned villages and skeletal trees, the landscape as harsh as the Emperor's decree. You're surrounded by a mix of farmers, criminals, and displaced folks, all lumped together with no respect for background or status. This wasn't just about building a wall, it was a display of imperial power through mass mobilization. The sheer numbers astound you. But what's more staggering is the speed of recruitment. The Empire demands results, and it demands them yesterday. Your uniform is simple rough hemp clothes, a wide-brimmed straw hat to shield your eyes from the unforgiving sun, and worn-out straw sandals that barely protect your feet from the rocky ground. There's no room for comfort here, only survival. You carry whatever tools you're assigned, typically a rusty hoe or a pick, as you follow the long, winding path toward the wall's construction sites. The officials bark orders, their voices cutting through the dust like whips. You feel a mix of fear, anger, and a strange numbness setting in. After all, this wall is supposed to protect the Empire, but right now, it feels like it's breaking you. The logistics of conscription weren't perfect. Some of you are farmers, uprooted in the middle of planting season. Others are prisoners sentenced to this grueling labour instead of execution. Children as young as 10 or 11 sometimes appear among the ranks, too weak to build walls but needed for menial tasks. Historians still debate how much of the workforce consisted of free citizens versus enslaved or coerced labourers. What's clear is that this patchwork army of labourers was a massive social experiment imposed by imperial ambition. As you march, you see others already showing the strain backs bent, faces pale, hands blistered and cracked. The weight of imperial orders presses down like the sun overhead. You begin to understand that survival here means more than strength. It means endurance, obedience, and a bit of luck. Stories circulate among the labourers' tales of those who tried to escape, only to be caught and punished publicly, their pain serving as grim reminders. Guards with whips patrol the work camps, their cold eyes scanning for any sign of weakness or dissent. Still, not everything is bleak. A few of your fellow labourers crack jokes in low voices, trying to lift spirits. You share scraps of food and stolen moments of rest beneath scant trees. Sometimes, at night, the sky is so clear and filled with stars that you momentarily forget the wall, the toil, and the Empire's demands. But dawn always brings the same orders: build faster, build higher, build stronger. There's no room for hesitation. The conscription system itself was a marvel of administration. The Emperor's bureaucrats coordinated the roundups, transportation, and supply lines across hundreds of miles. In some ways, you're part of an ancient human wave, massive, unstoppable, and terrifying in its scale. This isn't just labour, it's a show of power. The wall is less about stone and earth than about control. The Emperor wants to prove that his reach extends everywhere, even into your small village and into your hands. You start to see why historians argue so fiercely over the number of workers involved and the conditions they endured. Some say millions were conscripted over the decades. Others insist the numbers were smaller but still staggering. Either way, the conscription wasn't just a call to arms, it was a transformation of society, where the individual faded into the mass. By the time you arrive at the worksite, your shoulders ache, your stomach growls, and your heart pounds. The reality sinks in. This isn't a short stint. You'll be here for months, maybe years. The wall isn't just a construction project, it's a life sentence. And if you thought the hardest part was marching here, you haven't seen anything yet. You step onto the unforgiving landscape, and immediately you feel the weight of nature's wrath pressing down on you. The terrain is as merciless as the Emperor's orders: dry, cracked earth stretching into endless deserts, where the sun beats down like a giant hammer, relentless and unforgiving. Sandstorms whip through the air, stinging your eyes and scratching your skin raw. You squint against the haze, the horizon shimmering with heat, and wonder how anything human-made could survive here, let alone a massive wall. Mountains loom ahead, jagged and towering, their rocky faces sharp as knives. Climbing these peaks with just your battered tools and a basket for hauling dirt feels like trying to move the earth itself. The cold at night cuts through your thin clothes, a biting contrast to the daytime furnace. In the high passes, snow can fall unexpectedly, frosting the ground and freezing your fingers until they feel numb and useless. You realize quickly, survival here is the first battle. Even before you lay a single brick, water is a scarce, precious resource. You trudge to distant streams, only to find them muddied or nearly dried up. Drinking from them risks sickness, but thirst drives you on. Your tongue feels like sandpaper, your throat burns. You long for a moment's relief, a shady tree, a cool breeze, but the landscape offers none. Historians still argue whether the Qin builders used any specific methods to source and conserve water at these remote sites. But from your vantage point, it's clear they had to cope with scarcity every day. The ground beneath your feet is a patchwork of sand, rock, and hard-packed dirt. Every step kicks up clouds of dust that cling to your sweat-slick skin and scratch your lungs. It's exhausting work simply to stand upright in this environment, let alone haul baskets of earth and stones up steep slopes. You catch yourself imagining a modern-day construction site, with machines and cranes, but here, it's just you, your body, and whatever primitive tools you've been given. Wildlife doesn't offer much comfort. Snakes lurk in the shadows, and scorpions hide beneath rocks, ready to sting. The occasional wolf's howl echoes in the distance, adding an eerie soundtrack to your grueling days. At night, the cold and silence press down like a weight. Sleep is fitful. Your body aches from hours of hauling and digging, muscles cramping in protest. The desert sand itself is a formidable foe. Shifting with every gust of wind, it threatens to undo your work. The earth you pack into the wall's core can be swept away in moments. You and your comrades build quickly, but nature always fights back. Torrential winds and dust storms can erase days of labour overnight. The wall is a living thing, constantly under siege from the elements as much as from invaders. Yet there is strange beauty in this harshness. The golden light at dawn paints the mountains in shades of rose and amber. The night sky, unpolluted and vast, is a glittering canvas of stars. You catch fleeting glimpses of rare desert flowers pushing through cracks in the soil, resilient and stubborn. Much like you, even here, in the most brutal corners of the empire, life clings on. This brutal landscape is not just a physical challenge, but a mental one. Each day tests your resolve. You begin to understand why some workers gave up or simply disappeared. The desert swallows the weak or the unlucky, and few tales reach back to tell their stories. Scholars still debate exactly how many perished here, victims not just of imperial will, but of nature's indifference. As you work, you learn to respect the landscape, adapting your movements, timing your labour to avoid the worst heat, and sharing water and shade when you can. You bond with fellow labourers over shared misery and tiny victories like finally hoisting a heavy basket up a steep incline or surviving a fierce sandstorm without injury. These moments remind you that human endurance is strange and stubborn, a flicker of life stubbornly burning against overwhelming odds. So, you keep moving forward, step by dusty step, carving a monument out of the earth itself. The Great Wall doesn't just span the land, it is shaped by it, tested by it, and forever intertwined with this harsh, beautiful, and unforgiving terrain. You realise quickly to build the wall, you must first survive the wild world it crosses. Your hands clutch the tools primitive, awkward, and maddeningly inefficient. A hoe with a cracked wooden handle, a chipped stone pick, and a woven basket that seems to tear every time you try to carry dirt. This is your toolkit for a job so immense it might as well be impossible. You wonder how anyone ever expected these crude instruments to turn dirt and rock into a fortress visible from space. But here you are, tasked with transforming the wild earth into the backbone of an empire. The hoe scrapes the ground, breaking up hard soil that's baked dry by the sun. You jab your pick into rocky patches, chipping away at stubborn stones, the metal biting but dull from overuse. The basket feels heavier with every load your back aches as you heave it up steep slopes, dust clouding your vision. It's slow, grueling work. You try to imagine a modern construction crew with bulldozers and cranes. Instead, you have calloused hands and sheer grit. Historians still argue whether the ancient builders had any standardized tools, or if each region made do with what was locally available. Your experience suggests the latter. On some days, you use bone or wooden implements. In others, crude metal tools scavenged or forged on site. There's no comfort in your gear, just tools that barely hold together against the mountain of work ahead. Beyond the basics, your technology extends only as far as human muscle and willpower. To move the massive amounts of earth, you rely on baskets swung from shoulder poles, human chains passing stones hand to hand, and makeshift ramps built from logs and dirt. The concept of simple machines levers. Pulleys exist, but in the most rudimentary form. You occasionally see clever scaffolding made from bamboo poles lashed together, but it's fragile and time-consuming. The process is repetitive. Dig, load, carry, dump, repeat. Your muscles scream. Your breath comes in ragged gasps. You long for a break, but the overseer's sharp eyes and cracking whips remind you that time is money, and the Emperor demands speed. The wool can't wait for your aching joints. Curiously, there's a fringe theory among some scholars that early builders might have used sticky rice mixed with lime as a form of ancient concrete to bind bricks. You can't verify it yourself, but imagining the resourcefulness needed to hold thousands of bricks together without modern mortar makes you appreciate the ingenuity hidden in these ancient methods. You notice that in different regions, the wall looks different, built with whatever materials the terrain offers. In some stretches, it's thick rammed earth, compacted by human or animal power. In others, bricks are laid meticulously, a labour-intensive process that demands precision you can barely imagine after days of rough hauling. You wonder how these local differences affected your work. Maybe the toolset changes with each new section. More bricks mean more careful stacking. Earthwork means backbreaking, digging and pounding. Sometimes you see small teams using wooden sleds to drag heavy stones uphill. The sleds creak and groan. The ropes strain against the pull. You marvel at the coordination needed, everyone working as one. There's a rhythm here, a strange dance between human endurance and practical necessity. Of course, the simplicity of your tools comes with a high cost. Blisters, cuts, and bruises are part of daily life. You watch others fall ill, their wounds slow to heal in the dusty environment. The tools don't just shape the wall, they shape the workers' bodies and lives. You suspect many don't make it past the first few months. Despite all this, there's a grim satisfaction in the small progress you witness. Every basket dumped, every stone laid is a tiny rebellion against the impossible. You remind yourself that this wall is a symbol of an empire's will, and even with these crude tools, you are part of something far bigger than yourself. The sheer scale of human effort here is staggering, building a barrier that would shape history, stone by stone, sweat by sweat. So you dig deeper, carry heavier, and push onward. The tools may be crude, but your determination isn't. In this relentless labour, you find a strange kind of purpose, one that echoes through the ages in every brick and every grain of earth. The food situation is challenging, to say the least. You wake up hungry, and you fall asleep hungry, with your stomach growling a relentless, miserable tune. The Emperor's promise of glory and protection doesn't come with gourmet meals. Instead, your daily ration is a thin, gritty porridge, mostly millet or barley boiled to a watery mush that barely fills your belly. Sometimes a handful of dried vegetables or beans, but meat is a luxury few here ever taste. You wonder how anyone can do hard labour on so little fuel. The flavour or lack thereof is almost a joke among the labourers. Tastes like chewing on dust, someone mutters one morning, and the crack of dry bread against your teeth feels like punishment. Still, you eat quickly, swallowing lumps of grain before the overseers notice you dawdling. The food isn't just bland, it's insufficient. Your body aches for protein and fats to rebuild muscles, but the Emperor's supply chain prioritizes soldiers and nobles over the grunt workers. You quickly learn to ration your rations, trading small portions with comrades, sometimes stealing a few roots or wild berries when the chance arises. Here's the quirky part. There's evidence that some workers might have resorted to eating tree bark or roots to stave off starvation. You try it once, chewing on a dry twig when the hunger pangs become unbearable. It tastes terrible, but dulls the hunger just enough to keep you going. Historians still debate how widespread such desperate measures were, but you can't blame anyone for trying anything to survive. You start to notice how malnutrition affects your fellow workers. Skin sags, eyes lose their spark, energy wanes. Scurvy might sneak in, with swollen gums and bleeding joints, though no one calls it that here. It's just the pain. Disease and exhaustion move like shadows through the camps, picking off the weak with chilling efficiency. Some labourers collapse mid-shift, never to rise again. You see the fearful looks on everyone's faces, wondering if they'll be next. Water, too, is scarce and often contaminated. You're grateful when a rain shower comes, even if it's just a brief sprinkle, washing away some of the dust and providing fresh water for a day or two. Sometimes you drink from stagnant pools or shallow wells, risking sickness. Dysentery runs rampant, and you've heard rumours of entire crews wiped out by outbreaks. But the social dynamics around food are as harsh as the hunger. Food hoarding is a constant temptation, and fights sometimes break out over stolen rations. You're wary of who you trust. The camaraderie you hoped for is strained by desperation. Still, you find brief comfort in shared meals, swapping stories, laughing quietly at the terrible porridge, and imagining what a real feast would taste like. In the evenings, when the workday ends and the sun dips below the horizon, you sometimes hear the faint melody of flutes or drums from nearby camps, reminders that life and culture persist even in hardship. It's a small comfort, a reminder that you're part of a vast, living empire. On the brighter side, some regions along the wall had access to slightly better supplies. You overhear guards talking about shipments from towns or caravans bringing salt, preserved meat, and even wine for higher-ups. But for you, those are distant luxuries, dreams as far away as the horizon. Your food situation is a stark reminder that the Great Wall is not just an architectural marvel, but a human ordeal. It's a daily fight against hunger, thirst, and exhaustion. The wall demands everything, and the Empire gives back so little. Yet, despite the gnawing emptiness in your belly, you keep working, driven by a mix of fear, duty, and a stubborn hope that this hardship will someday mean something. So you swallow your porridge, grit your teeth, and prepare for another grueling day. Because if you don't eat, you don't build, and if you don't build, well, you probably won't survive. The daily grind isn't just about hunger or terrain, it's about the blistering, unforgiving sun. From dawn till dusk, you feel its weight pressing on your back like an invisible fist. The sun's rays beat down relentlessly, turning your skin a harsh, peeling red. Sweat streams down your face, stinging your eyes and mixing with the dust coating your body. You think, this is what roasting alive must feel like, only slower. Shade is a rare luxury, a brief reprieve snatched under the occasional thorn bush or crumbling ruin. The heat isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Dehydration creeps in quietly, a sneaky enemy that leaves you dizzy and weak before you realize. You watch others stagger, faces flushed and breathless, collapsing under the sun's tyranny. Sunstroke claims more lives here than the wall's enemies ever could. The guards grumble about wasting labour when workers drop from exhaustion, but there's little mercy to spare. Historians still argue whether ancient builders took deliberate measures to protect workers from the sun or simply accepted losses as inevitable. Some accounts suggest that workers soaked their straw hats in water or wrapped cloths around their heads. You try these tricks yourself, but the relief is fleeting. The air feels like a furnace, and you often fantasize about a modern air conditioner or at least a giant ice cube. Interestingly, some ancient texts describe workers applying a mixture of crocodile dung and mud to their faces as a sunscreen of sorts. You can't decide if that's ingenious or horrifying. Imagine slathering yourself in something that sounds like a bad biology experiment just to avoid sunburn. It's the kind of quirky detail that makes you question how people survived and somehow thrived in such harsh conditions. This sun isn't the only weather challenge. You endure sudden storms that whip dust and sand into your eyes and clothes, soaking you with rare but cold rain. You learn quickly that a downpour can turn the ground into a slippery quagmire, making the task of hauling baskets and laying bricks twice as treacherous. Mud clings to your sandals, and you slip more than once, earning sharp reprimands from guards. When the wind picks up, the dust storms are brutal, forcing you to crouch low and cover your face. Visibility drops to nearly zero, and you stumble blindly, hoping not to fall off a ledge or lose your tools. You've heard legends of workers lost in these storms, swallowed by the desert's fury. Whether true or not, the fear is real and pervasive. Despite it all, you begin to notice the rhythms of the environment. You time your hardest work for early mornings, racing the sun before it can sap your strength. Midday becomes a sluggish, miserable slog. Afternoons are spent conserving energy or doing lighter tasks like stacking stones or patching small wall sections. You learn to read the clouds and wind, anticipating the next weather event. This intimate dance with nature changes your perspective on the wall itself. It isn't just a human feat, but a contest between empire and environment. The wall weaves through deserts, mountains and forests, forced to bend and adapt to the whims of the land. It's a monument to persistence both of human will and natural forces resisting that will. Your skin darkens, cracked and peeling in places. Your eyes squint against the glare, and your clothes are stiff with sweat and dust. You look like a walking relic, a testament to the harshness of the task. But every day you endure, you're one step closer to carving your mark into history, however small. So, you grit your teeth against the sun, raise your basket, and keep moving. Because here, in the relentless heat, survival means more than strength. It means stubbornness, adaptation, and a stubborn refusal to be beaten by the sky itself. The relentless labour brings pain that's as much mental as physical. You start to notice your body unravelling, joints stiffen, muscles cramp, and every step feels heavier than the last. You try to ignore the aches, chalking them up to normal wear and tear, but deep down, you know this kind of pain isn't natural. Your back is a constant reminder of the impossible burden you carry, both the weight of earth in your basket and the weight of the Emperor's demands. Blisters bloom on your hands like little battlegrounds, raw and angry. You peel off your gloves, if you even have any, wincing at the tender skin beneath. Some workers use crushed herbal leaves as a poultice, believing they can ease the pain or speed healing. Whether that actually works or not, it's a comfort to hold on to any hope, no matter how small. Historians still debate how much ancient medical knowledge the builders had access to, but what you see suggests it was a mix of folk remedies and sheer grit. You notice the rhythm of pain throughout the day, dull and nagging in the morning, sharp and stabbing after midday, then a relentless throbbing by night. Sleep offers little respite. You lie on rough straw mats, every movement a fresh reminder of your labour. Your muscles twitch involuntarily, and the nightmares come visions of the wall crumbling, of being buried alive under its rubble. Some suggest that ancient labourers might have used acupuncture or massage to ease their suffering. But if so, those comforts are luxuries few here can afford. Most people simply bear the pain silently, speaking only in quiet grunts and sighs. There's a grim camaraderie in shared suffering, an unspoken bond forged by aches and exhaustion. Your knees creak painfully as you climb, and your hands tremble when you try to grip tools. You see older workers moving slower, faces etched with years of hardship, bodies bowed like ancient willow trees, yet they keep going, driven by routine, fear, or maybe just habit. You start to realize that this work isn't just breaking the earth, it's breaking people. There's a fringe theory that some workers may have been addicted to opium or alcohol to dull the pain, though no official records confirm this. You overhear rumours and whispers at night about secret caches of liquor traded quietly, a temporary escape from the endless grind. It makes sense when every day feels like punishment. Any relief, even fleeting, becomes a lifeline. Your spirit is tested as much as your body. The isolation, the monotony, and the pain pressed down on your mind like a vice. You catch yourself daydreaming of home, of soft beds and warm meals, of faces you may never see again. Yet the wall demands everything, and stopping means death, whether from the overseer's whip or the desert itself. Still, there are moments of strange beauty in your suffering. You learn to listen to your body's whispers, the subtle signals it sends when you're overdoing it. You find brief pockets of peace, like the quiet dawn when the world feels untouched and the only sound is the soft clink of stones being set. These small moments remind you that pain, though relentless, is also part of a larger story, the story of human endurance writ large across the centuries. So you grit your teeth, wrap your hands in rough cloth, and prepare to face another day. The pain will come, and it will go, but your determination holds steady, stubborn as the wall you helped build. The work isn't just about digging and hauling, it's about strict control and brutal discipline. You quickly learn that the overseers wield whips and harsh words like weapons, meting out punishment for the smallest delays or mistakes. One misstep, one faltering pace, and you risk a lash across your back, leaving stinging red welts that throb long after the sun sets. There's no room for mercy here. The wall must rise, and the Emperor's will is absolute. The overseers aren't just cruel for cruelty's sake, they're enforcing a system built on fear. You notice how they break spirits as much as backs, shouting commands that echo across the dusty landscape, their eyes cold and unblinking. You quickly learn to keep your head down and your movements steady, hoping to avoid attention. A whispered joke or a shared smile can be a dangerous luxury under watchful eyes. Historians still debate whether all labourers were prisoners or if some were conscripted peasants working under duress. From what you see, it's a mix. Some faces show resignation, others fear, and a few smoulder with quiet anger. The social order is rigid, and there's no room for negotiation. Your fate is tied to the whim of those with whips, and the punishment can be swift and public. You hear stories of escape attempts, desperate and usually futile. The desert and mountains offer no sanctuary. They are as deadly as any overseer's lash. Those caught trying to flee face brutal reprisals, beatings, shackles, or worse. The wall isn't just a physical barrier against invaders, it's a prison built to contain and control its own workers. There's a curious detail you notice: some overseers seem to believe in rituals or omens, muttering prayers or offering small sacrifices to appease gods or spirits. Maybe it's a way to feel control over an uncontrollable situation. Fringe theories among scholars suggest that these rituals were attempts to ward off bad luck or disease, or even to calm rebellious spirits among the labourers. Your daily routine becomes a carefully choreographed dance to avoid punishment. Move quickly, but not too fast. Work hard, but not too visibly tired. The guards' presence is constant, their shadows long in the afternoon sun. Every wrong word, every slow motion, risks harsh consequences. Yet, despite the fear, small acts of defiance flicker in the camp, quiet refusals to obey, stolen moments of rest, whispered jokes that lighten the crushing atmosphere. You cling to these moments, fragile as they are, like tiny sparks against the oppressive darkness. Living under this regime changes you. Trust is scarce, friendships are cautious, and fear is a constant companion. The work crushes your body, but the overseer's cruelty gnaws at your spirit. Still, you push on because the wall must be built, and there's no other choice. So you steel yourself against the lash and the scowl, carrying your basket and your pain. The wall grows, one brutal day at a time, a monument not just to empire, but to endurance under oppression. As the wall climbs the rugged mountains, the terrain becomes a new kind of enemy. You trudge up steep, jagged slopes, heart pounding and legs trembling, dragging heavy loads uphill. Every step feels like a gamble, one false move, and you could tumble down the rocky face, taking tools and hopes with you. The altitude thins the air, making every breath a labour in itself. You curse the sky for being so merciless. Here, the landscape dictates the wall's shape, forcing it to zigzag and curve like a giant serpent. You notice that some sections seem almost impossibly placed, perched on cliffs that look like they were chosen more for spectacle than strategy. You wonder how anyone decided that a sheer drop was the best spot to build. Your muscles burn as you hoist stones onto precarious ledges. Your hands roar from gripping sharp rock. Historians still argue whether the mountainous stretches were originally part of the first wall or added later as defensive priorities shifted. Either way, you're stuck with it. The altitude and steepness slow everything down. What might have taken a day on flat ground stretches into a week here. You learn to balance your weight carefully, planting each foot deliberately to avoid slips that could send you hurtling down. The rock itself is unforgiving, jagged, brittle, and unyielding. It resists your picks and hammers. You use fire-setting lighting controlled blazes to crack the stone before chipping it away to loosen massive chunks. A technique both primitive and effective. Watching the fire consume the rock, turning it to brittle ash, you feel a strange mix of respect and relief. The wall is part nature, part human endeavour, and your work is the violent negotiation between the two. One quirky tidbit you overhear is that in some mountain regions, workers use trained dogs to help carry smaller loads or deliver messages across treacherous paths. You never saw this yourself, but the idea of furry little helpers scaling mountains alongside you is oddly comforting. Weather up here can shift in seconds. You experience sudden, bone-chilling winds that whip through the cliffs, threatening to knock you off balance. Snow dusts the peaks even in early autumn, and when the cold bites, your fingers stiffen, making gripping tools a challenge. You envy the warmth of lower camps, but know that the mountain wall's height is a fortress in itself, imposing and isolating. Despite the dangers, there's a stark beauty to this rugged landscape. The sunrise over the peaks paints the sky in fiery hues, and the vast valleys below seem endless. You find yourself stealing moments to breathe it in, letting the silence and grandeur seep into your weary bones. Yet, the mountain's majesty doesn't lessen the risk. Every day here tests your limits, and you know that one misstep could mean the end. The wall is not just a defensive structure, it's a daily battle between man, nature, and sheer willpower. So you steady your breath, grip your tools tighter, and press upward, knowing that the wall's strength depends on your stubborn steps across these unforgiving heights. Cold bites deep as the seasons turn, and winter at the wall is a beast of its own. You wake to frost covering everything, your blankets stiff, and your breath a mist that hangs in the air like a ghost. The sun takes its time rising, and when it does, it barely warms the bone-chilling wind that cuts through your clothes. Your fingers feel numb before the day even begins, and every movement becomes a slow battle against the cold. Food that was already scarce in summer seems even harder to come by in winter. Rations are thinner, and the porridge is colder and harder to swallow. Your body craves warmth and fuel. But the Empire's priorities don't shift with the seasons. You huddle with others around meagre fires, sharing body heat and stories to stay sane. The smoke stings your eyes, but it's a small price for a few minutes of comfort. Winter work is grueling in new ways. Frozen ground resists your picks and shovels, and hauling bricks becomes treacherous on icy paths. Slips and falls are common, and the guard's patience is as thin as the frost. You hear stories of workers succumbing to hypothermia, their bodies found frozen in the morning light, a grim reminder of the wall's deadly reach. Historians still argue how the builders coped with such harsh winters. Some suggest they paused construction in the coldest months, while others believe work never truly stopped after all. An empire's defense doesn't wait for spring. You suspect both might be true, depending on location and urgency. Curiously, there are accounts that some labourers wore layers of hemp clothing, treated with animal fat to repel wind and water. You can imagine how heavy and itchy those garments must have been, but also how vital. Staying dry and warm isn't just comfort, it's survival. In some camps, you hear that workers tied small bundles of dried herbs to their clothing to mask body odour and ward off pests. A bizarre but clever adaptation. Your body shivers uncontrollably at times, and frostbite starts to claim your toes and fingertips. Movement slows as pain and numbness set in, but you push on, afraid to show weakness. The cold doesn't just freeze your skin, it seeps into your spirit, threatening to freeze it solid too. You notice the camaraderie deepening in these dark months. Shared hardships forge stronger bonds. Workers swap tips on staying warm, share extra clothing, and take turns stoking fires. Laughter, though rare, becomes a treasured balm against the bleakness. Despite the cold and hardship, the wall itself transforms in winter. Snow blankets its surface, softening its harsh edges and lending it a strange, quiet beauty. The frozen landscape around it feels like another world, still, silent, eternal. It's a stark contrast to the brutal effort that created it. You wonder if the emperors ever saw this side of their creation, the silent, snow-covered wall standing strong against the winter storm. For you, It's a constant reminder that this monumental task is not just about bricks and mortar, but about surviving and enduring, no matter the season. So, wrapped in threadbare layers and stubborn will, you face the frozen dawn and keep building, because on this wall, even winter obeys the Empire's unyielding demands. The food you eat or don't eat plays a huge role in your daily survival, and scarcity is a constant threat. Meals are simple, mostly porridge made from millet or barley, thick and gritty, sometimes flavoured with a bit of wild vegetables or dried meat if you're lucky. Hunger gnaws at your belly like a persistent rodent, and you learn to ignore the empty ache as best you can. The stomach is a bottomless pit, but the rations never quite fill it. You quickly realize that food isn't just nourishment, it's a currency of power and control. Guards dole out portions with grim faces, sometimes tipping the scales in favor of workers who are faster or more obedient. Others get scraps or leftovers, and rumours swirl about bribes or favouritism. You watch with a mix of envy and disbelief as some workers hoard stolen grains or barter food under the cover of night. It's survival of the sneakiest. Historians still argue how organised and efficient the supply chains were for these massive labour forces. Some suggest the government tried to maintain steady provisions, while others believe shortages and corruption made famine a frequent companion. Either way, hunger is a shadow looming over every shift. There's an odd tradition you hear whispered about workers believe that chewing on certain wild herbs helps suppress appetite or ease stomach pains. One common choice was licorice root, which tastes bitter but supposedly calms hunger pangs. Whether it works or is just a placebo, you try it out, chewing on dry twigs and grimacing at the taste. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Food scarcity also leads to strange social dynamics. You notice that those who share their rations gain respect and protection. In contrast, hoarders become isolated, resented by the group. Sharing food isn't just kindness, it's a survival strategy. The harsh environment forces cooperation, even if grudgingly. During the occasional festivals or rest days, you glimpse how food could lift spirits. Small feasts with rice cakes, salted fish, or dried fruits feel like tiny victories, a brief reminder of the home or better times. The sweetness of those rare treats lingers, contrasting sharply with the usual blandness. Yet, you learn quickly that food is unpredictable, sometimes plentiful, sometimes a cruel joke. You develop a kind of emotional armour, detaching yourself from hunger to avoid despair. Still, when your body demands sustenance, there's no ignoring the physical reality. At night, the hunger pangs sometimes wake you, a painful reminder that survival here is a daily struggle. You wrap your thin blanket tighter, wishing for a full belly and a warm meal. The Empire might control the wall, but hunger is its own tyrant, merciless and unyielding. So you nibble on tough millet porridge, count your meagre blessings, and keep moving forward, because in this desert of stone and sand, even the smallest crumb means the difference between life and death. Water, the most precious resource, is a constant worry. You learn quickly that hydration means everything, but the wall's location makes clean water scarce. Wells are few and often far apart, and the water you get tastes earthy and bitter, leaving a strange aftertaste that lingers like regret. You carry your water in crude leather pouches or small clay jars, but these are heavy, and you ration your sips carefully. During the hottest days, your throat burns as if you swallowed fire, and you fantasize about a cool mountain spring or a modern water bottle that never runs dry. Dehydration creeps up on you quietly, turning your lips cracked and parched, your vision blurry. You see others collapse, overcome by heat stroke or exhaustion, their bodies no longer able to fight the desert's thirst. Historians still debate how sophisticated the ancient Chinese water management systems were near the wall's construction sites. Some suggest aqueducts or canals were used to bring water closer. But evidence is patchy. Regardless, you feel the daily struggle, knowing that every drop is earned with effort and luck. One quirky tidbit you hear about workers using certain types of moss or lichen to filter murky water. It sounds like something out of a survival manual, but if it helped prevent sickness, it's a clever adaptation. You try to mimic it, scooping water through layers of cloth and green goo, hoping it's doing more good than harm. Sometimes, during droughts, water becomes a bargaining chip. Workers trade portions, steal from each other, or even fight. You witness tense standoffs over water sources, with guards often turning a blind eye perhaps because watching labourers squabble is less troublesome than managing resources. You also notice that drinking unclean water leads to illness. Diarrhea and fevers spread through camps like wildfire, weakening the workforce and increasing mortality. Some workers are too weak to stand, their eyes glassy and vacant. The fear of sickness is as real as the fear of the overseer's whip. To conserve water, you adopt strange habits, spitting less, washing only essential areas, and using saliva to dampen dust from your face. These small, uncomfortable tricks become second nature, survival instincts carved into your behaviour. Despite the hardships, the few times you find a fresh spring or rain catchment are moments of pure joy. You fill your container greedily, splashing the cool liquid on your face, washing dust from your skin. For a fleeting moment, the wall's harshness seems to soften. Still, water remains a constant worry, a silent threat lurking behind every stone you lay. Without it, the wall and you cannot stand. So you guard your supply fiercely, sip cautiously, and keep moving forward, because in this endless dry stretch, water is life, and life is fragile. The threat of disease hangs over the camps like a dark cloud, almost as deadly as the relentless labour. You witness coughs echoing through the tents, skin mottled with fevers, and the slow, haunting decline of those who fall ill. Conditions are cramped and unsanitary, with waste piling up dangerously close to where you sleep and eat. It's a breeding ground for sickness, and no one is immune. You see wounds from work injuries become infected, turning red and swollen. Without proper medical care, even a small cut can spiral into a deadly infection. The smell of decay lingers, mixing with sweat and dust in an overwhelming miasma. Sometimes, the sick are dragged away, never to be seen again, swallowed by the Empire's grim machinery. Historians still debate how effective ancient Chinese medicine was on these labourers. Some evidence suggests herbal remedies and acupuncture were available, but their reach among the lower classes was likely limited. You overhear whispered stories about healers who came to camps offering cures, sometimes real, sometimes snake oil. One curious tidbit you hear is that workers sometimes used crushed jade or powdered cinnabar as talismans against disease, believing the stones had protective powers. Whether placebo or not, clutching these tiny charms seems to give some comfort against the invisible enemy. You notice that fear of illness makes the camp's social dynamics even more strained. Healthy workers keep their distance from the sick, and rumours fly about contagious curses or divine punishment. Isolation is common, and the sick often die alone, their suffering hidden from the overseers who only care about productivity. Still, some moments of care break through the grim routine. Workers share simple herbal teas or try to bandage each other's wounds, small acts of kindness in a harsh world. These gestures are fragile beacons of humanity amidst the stone and sweat. You also learn about the role of diet and hygiene, or the lack thereof in the spread of disease. Limited food variety and poor sanitation weaken bodies, making infections more likely. Bathing is a luxury. Dust and sweat build up, turning skin into a battlefield of irritation and sores. At night, the sound of coughing echoes through the camp like a haunting chorus, a constant reminder that survival isn't just about strength or endurance, it's about dodging unseen enemies. You hold your breath sometimes, hoping your own body will stay healthy enough to see another day. Despite the looming shadow of sickness, the wall's work goes on, relentless and unyielding. You realize that disease is just another layer of the challenge, an invisible wall that you must fight as fiercely as the stones. So you tend your body as best you can, clutch your talisman tight and press on, knowing that in this vast empire's shadow, survival is a fragile, precious thing. Sleep, or what passes for it, is a rare and precious commodity. After grueling days hauling stones and mixing mortar, your body aches for rest, but the camp's noise and cramped conditions conspire against you. The clatter of tools being prepared for the next day, the murmurs of exhausted workers, and the occasional bark of guards form a constant backdrop to your restless nights. You try to curl up on thin mats or rough straw bedding, the cold seeping through and making your muscles tense. Dreams are fleeting, often interrupted by aches or the fear of another punishing day. Sometimes, exhaustion overtakes your mind entirely, pulling you into a foggy, dreamless sleep that's both a blessing and a curse. Historians still argue about how labourers coped mentally with the relentless pressure and scant rest. Some believe small rituals or camaraderie helped, while others point to despair and mental breakdowns as common. From what you experience, it's a fragile balance hope fighting against overwhelming fatigue. One quirky habit you pick up is the use of makeshift pillows stuffed with dried grass or scraps of cloth. It's not much, but it helps keep your head off the hard ground and soothes your neck. You laugh quietly to yourself, imagining future pillow commercials boasting ancient Great Wall-approved comfort. Sleep deprivation turns the camp into a haze of half-awake workers shuffling like ghosts. You catch yourself nodding off mid-task, heart pounding from adrenaline. The guards don't tolerate this. A dropped stone or missed step earns you a glare or worse. In the rare moments of rest, stories circulate tales of faraway homes, lost families, or dreams of escape. These stories are lifelines, connecting you to a world beyond the wall. They also remind you of what's at stake, fueling your grim determination. Sometimes you hear songs quiet, melodic voices rising in the night. Singing is a form of subtle resistance, a way to hold on to identity and humanity amid dehumanizing toil. The songs speak of rivers, mountains, and freedom, striking chords deep in your heart. Despite the fatigue, you learn to treasure these brief respites. Even a few hours of rest can renew your spirit just enough to face another day. Sleep becomes a secret rebellion against the Empire's demands, a momentary escape where pain and fear soften. As dawn approaches, you prepare to rise again. Muscles stiff but spirit stubborn. The wall doesn't pause for tiredness, and neither can you. so you close your eyes briefly, willing sleep to hold on just a little longer before the harsh light pulls you back into the grind. The overseers are a relentless presence, their eyes sharp and unforgiving. You feel their gaze constantly like a hawk circling above, ready to swoop down at the slightest sign of weakness or rebellion. They patrol with wooden staffs, cracking them against stone or flesh, a sharp reminder that obedience is mandatory. Complaints or protests are met with swift punishment, and the whispers of rebellion are quickly silenced. You learn to mask exhaustion and pain, moving with a careful rhythm that suggests strength, even when your limbs scream to collapse. The overseers have little patience for slow work or mistakes. One dropped brick, one missed command, and you risk lashes or extra labour. The fear of punishment becomes a shadow you carry with you, heavier than the stones. Historians still debate how organised the punishment system really was. Some accounts suggest harsh corporal punishment was routine, while others believe it was sporadic, depending on the overseer's temper. Either way, the threat looms large in every worker's mind. A quirky detail you notice: some overseers carried small whistles or bells to signal commands across noisy construction zones. It sounds almost comical, but it's an effective way to cut through the chaos and keep control. You half expect a referee's whistle to blow every time the foreman yells. Despite the harsh discipline, some overseers seem to develop grudging respect for the toughest workers. You hear stories of supervisors secretly easing workloads or offering extra food rations to those who prove their grit. Of course, such favours are rare and come with strings attached. The social dynamic between overseers and labourers is tense and complex. Sometimes you glimpse moments of understanding or shared humanity, a quick nod, a brief word of encouragement before the guard's mask of authority falls back into place. These flickers are rare and fleeting, but give you hope that even here, human connection can survive. You also notice that the overseers are under pressure too. Their jobs depend on the wall's progress, and failure isn't an option. They bear the Empire's weight just as heavily, caught between enforcing harsh rules and managing an exhausted workforce. The constant surveillance wears on your nerves. You find yourself calculating every movement, every word, trying not to draw attention. Paranoia creeps in, and trust becomes a luxury few can afford. Still, the wall moves forward, stone by stone, under the watchful eyes of those who demand nothing less than perfection. You remind yourself that endurance is your weapon here, silent, stubborn, and unyielding. So you grit your teeth, swallow fear, and keep building, knowing that the overseer's gaze is as much a part of the wall as the mortar between the bricks. The soundscape around you is a cacophony of clinks, thuds, and grunts, the endless rhythm of labour. The constant noise becomes a strange kind of white noise, numbing your senses but never quite letting you escape. Hammers strike stone with a relentless beat, wooden carts creak under heavy loads, and the shouted commands from overseers cut sharply through the air. It's an overwhelming, exhausting soundtrack to your days. Yet, amid the din, you start to notice subtler sounds, the rhythmic tapping of skilled masons shaping bricks, the distant call of birds over the wall, and occasionally the soft murmur of a whispered conversation in a rare moment of rest. These small noises offer brief pockets of relief and humanity within the harsh soundscape. Historians still argue about the impact of noise on workers' health and morale. Some suggest that the cacophony caused long-term hearing damage and mental fatigue, while others believe the shared rhythms helped synchronize labour and build a rough sense of community. From your experience, it's a bit of both a brutal assault on the senses mixed with a strange, unspoken bond. You notice that some workers develop silent signals to communicate over the noise taps on shoulders, quick hand gestures, or even coded whistles. It's a quirky but effective way to maintain some connection without attracting the overseer's attention. You adopt these signs quickly, learning to read the subtle language of survival. At night, when the camp quiets, the absence of daytime noise feels eerie, almost unnatural. You find yourself missing the cacophony, the constant activity. It's like a lullaby of shared struggle. The silence exposes every creak and whisper, heightening your sense of vulnerability. Oddly, some of the loudest noises come not from the workers but from the wall itself. You hear the settling of stone, the occasional groan as earth shifts beneath the massive structure. There's something almost alive about it, as if the wall is breathing with you, sharing your pain and endurance. You also become attuned to the natural sounds beyond the construction, the wind sweeping over the barren hills, the distant howl of wolves, or the rustle of dry grass. These remind you that beyond this human-made beast lies a wild, indifferent world. Despite the overwhelming noise, you find moments to listen closely to the rhythm of work, the whispers of comrades, and the sounds of the land. These moments anchor you, grounding you in a harsh reality that is both brutal and strangely beautiful. So you keep your ears open, letting the sounds of the wall wash over you, a relentless symphony of endurance, struggle, and survival. Your clothes, mostly rough hemp or coarse cotton, offer little comfort or protection. They're thin, worn, and stained from dust and sweat, with hems fraying and buttons missing. The fabric scratches against your skin, especially when damp with sweat or rain, turning every movement into a mild irritation. You quickly learn that clothing isn't just about modesty or warmth. It's your only shield against the elements and the ceaseless grind. You patch and mend as best you can, using scraps of cloth or bits of leather scavenged from discarded gear. Fashion isn't exactly a priority here, but a torn sleeve or a ripped pant leg can catch on rocks or tools, turning minor inconveniences into dangerous hazards. Over time, your clothes become a patchwork of makeshift repairs, each telling a story of survival. Historians still argue how standardized or personal workers' clothing actually was. Some suggest uniforms existed for organization, while others believe workers wore whatever they could find. From what you see, there's little uniformity, just layers of necessity and desperation. One quirky detail you discover is that some workers rub animal fats or mud onto their clothes to repel insects or waterproof the fabric. It's messy and smells odd, but it helps keep biting flies and rain at bay. A small comfort in an otherwise uncomfortable existence. Clothing also becomes a way to claim identity or status. Those with slightly better garments or colourful scarves sometimes draw attention, gaining favour or suspicion. You notice that clothing can mark alliances or divisions, subtle signals in a world where words are often too risky. Despite the discomfort, you treasure whatever you can wear to shield your skin from sunburn, scrapes, and cold nights. A hat woven from straw or a simple cloak makes a surprising difference, guarding against the blistering sun or chilly winds. You also realize the importance of footgear. Your shoes, if you're lucky to have them, are basic leather or woven straw, often worn through and patched repeatedly. Blisters and cuts are constant companions, and you learn to walk carefully to avoid injuries that could slow you down or become infected. Over time, Your clothes grow heavy with sweat, dirt, and memories of each grueling day. They cling to you, a second skin that both protects and reminds you of the relentless struggle. So you adjust your tattered garments, bracing yourself against the world, knowing that in this harsh place, even your clothes fight alongside you for survival. The sheer size and scale of the Great Wall's construction site are staggering, a vast sprawl of human effort stretching over mountains, deserts, and valleys. You often pause, if only for a second, to take in the dizzying sight of walls zigzagging like giant stone snakes, rising and falling with the terrain. The enormity both humbles and overwhelms you, a testament to the Empire's ambition and your tiny place within it. You watch as hundreds, sometimes thousands, of workers swarm the site like ants, each doing their part to raise this colossal barrier. The wall isn't just a line on a map, it's a living, breathing project that evolves daily, shifting with the sweat and labour of countless hands. It's hard not to feel small standing amid such scale, the noise and activity creating a whirlwind of movement. Historians still debate how the wall's sections were coordinated. Some argue for centralised planning and strict schedules. Others suggest local teams had significant autonomy. From your vantage point, chaos and order coexist in uneasy balance, the wall growing despite constant challenges. You notice how the terrain shapes the work. Steep cliffs force you to haul stones up precarious paths, while desert plains stretch endlessly, demanding miles of fortification. The environment is as much an adversary as any overseer or hunger pang. Nature's obstacles push the wall and its builders to their limits. One quirky fact you learn: some parts of the wall incorporate natural features like cliffs or rivers, cleverly using them as defensive advantages. This blend of human engineering and natural landscape fascinates you, a reminder that the wall is more than bricks. It's a dialogue between man and earth. The wall also serves as a line of communication and control. You see watchtowers dotting the landscape, like silent sentinels scanning the horizon. These towers weren't just military posts, they were signal stations using smoke or fire to relay messages quickly across vast distances, an ancient warning system as effective as any modern tech. At night, the wall casts long shadows under the moonlight, a silent giant watching over the land. You imagine the soldiers stationed there, their eyes scanning for threats, their lives intertwined with the stone and mortar you helped place. Despite the immense labour and hardship, the wall's vastness is awe-inspiring. It's a monument to human will, persistence, and the sheer power of collective effort. Standing there, you feel both humbled and proud, a tiny part of something monumental, etched forever into history. So you push forward, stone in hand, eyes on the horizon, knowing the wall will outlast you, and that your sweat and toil are woven into its very foundation. The cold bites deep as winter creeps in, and you quickly learn that the Great Wall offers no shelter from the biting winds or freezing nights. Your breath fogs in the air, and your fingers stiffen, making even the simplest tasks feel like a battle. The cold seeps into your bones, turning muscles rigid and slowing your movements until each step feels like wading through ice. Fires are scarce, and warmth is a luxury for the lucky few. You huddle with others, sharing whatever scraps of fabric or bodies you can, clinging to heat as if it were a precious treasure. Nights stretch long and merciless, the cold turning dreams into shivering fits and restless tossing. You curse the wall's towering stones, which trap the chill instead of shielding from it. Historians still argue how ancient workers coped with the brutal winters. Some believe they had simple heating methods or insulated shelters, but evidence is limited. What you know is that surviving the cold is as much a test of will as the labour itself. One quirky survival trick you pick up is the use of animal fat smeared on exposed skin to create a crude barrier against frostbite. It's greasy and uncomfortable, but it offers a surprising shield against the harsh elements. You laugh dryly at the thought modern moisturizers could never compete. Clothing layers become your armor, multiple rough garments, patched and thickened, though none stop the cold completely. Your toes and fingers are particularly vulnerable, and frostbite is a constant threat. You watch others lose digits to the cold, their bodies marked by winter's cruelty. You also face the challenge of frozen water, your supply often locked in icy prisons, forcing desperate measures to thaw it. Sometimes you resort to melting snow, but it's cold and dirty, barely quenching your thirst. Dehydration and cold combine into a dangerous mix. The cold amplifies the wall's already daunting challenges, slowing progress and sapping morale. Some workers fall ill or simply cannot continue, their bodies surrendering to the merciless season. Yet the wall's construction never pauses. The Empire demands progress no matter the weather. In the bleak silence of winter nights, you find yourself staring up at the stars, imagining the distant warmth of a home and longing for a fire that won't go out. The cold is a quiet enemy, invisible yet relentless, testing every fibre of your being. Still, you grit your teeth, wrap your tattered clothes tighter, and face the frozen dawn. Because in the shadow of the Great Wall, survival means enduring every hardship, heat, dust, hunger, and cold alike. The end of a workday brings a fragile sense of relief, but your body remains a landscape of aches, bruises, and exhaustion. You limp back to the camp, muscles trembling and joints stiff, yearning for rest but knowing tomorrow will demand the same relentless grind. The Great Wall isn't just a construction project, it's a test of human endurance and spirit. In those rare quiet moments, you reflect on everything you've endured: the burning sun, the biting cold, the constant hunger, the ever-watchful overseers, and the endless toil. Each stone you've carried, each brick you've laid, is a small victory against overwhelming odds. You realize you've become part of something vast and timeless, a human thread woven into a colossal tapestry of empire and history. Historians still argue whether the Great Wall was more a symbol of defense or a tool of oppression, but what's undeniable is the wall's embodiment of human will, both its cruelty and resilience. You carry that duality with you as you settle down for the night, body weary but spirit stubborn. One quirky thought crosses your mind despite the hardship. You find yourself strangely proud of the wall. It's like a monument to stubbornness and sweat, a stubborn scar on the earth that says, "We endured." That sense of pride is a surprising balm, a flicker of light in the harsh shadows. As you close your eyes, you feel the slow pulse of life settling in your tired limbs. The wall's stones press silently around you, and you imagine the centuries of footsteps that will pass here, some like you, struggling, others walking free, oblivious to the pain beneath their feet. You know you probably wouldn't survive a day building the Great Wall of China in these brutal conditions, but you did, and in that survival, you find a strange kind of triumph. So you breathe deeply, feeling the steady rhythm of your heartbeat mingling with the ancient stone. The wall will stand long after you're gone, a silent witness to human endurance, pain, and hope. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The stars have wheeled overhead countless times since you began this journey, and now the night settles softly around you. The harshness of the day fades, replaced by a quiet calm that gently eases your thoughts. Your body may ache, your muscles may still throb, but there is a softness here, a gentle reminder that even the hardest struggles come to rest. Imagine the walls stretching into the twilight, its stones cooling under the moon's gentle touch. The wind whispers through the empty watchtowers, carrying with it the distant echoes of ancient voices and long-forgotten footsteps. You're part of this timeless moment, a single thread woven into a vast, enduring tapestry. Let your breath slow and deepen. Feel the quiet rhythm of your heart calming in your chest. The world outside grows still, and you are safe here, cocooned in the stories that outlast even the mightiest walls. There is no rush, no demand, just the peaceful passing of time. As you drift towards sleep, remember the strength you hold inside, quiet, steady, unyielding. You've walked the path of ancient builders, felt the weight of history, and emerged whole. Let that resilience settle within you like a soft, warm blanket. Now, let your mind rest. The wall will stand through centuries, and so will you in memory, in spirit, in the quiet power of endurance. Sweet dreams.